ayahuasca can be used completely differently. So it's very difficult to generalize and say ayahuasca shamans this or that. And I would add to that it's not so different from anthropology. In other words, there are many different ways of doing anthropology, and I don't wish at this point to speak for all the anthropologists in the world. Rather, I'd like to tell you about the kind of anthropology that I've been practicing. In 1984, I went to the Peruvian Amazon for the first time. I had no previous experience of the tropical rainforest or its indigenous inhabitants. But back in those days, the development banks, like the World Bank, said that to develop the Amazon, you have to rid the forest of its indigenous inhabitants and give the lands to people with an individual market mentality so that they cut the trees down and develop it and put up cattle ranches. They said Indians don't know how to use their lands rationally, and confiscating their territories is economically justified. As a young anthropologist, I wanted to live with a group of indigenous people and study how they used the rainforest to show that they used it rationally and therefore deserved the right to own their lands. The point was to try to contradict the international development banks and bring about a change of policy. So this was politically engaged anthropology from the get-go. I began living in a village in the forest with Shanik Indians. These people took me under their wing and started showing me what they knew about the forest. Well, it turns out that the Peruvian Amazon is the epicenter of world biodiversity. There's more species of trees, insects, reptiles, mammals, amphibians in this forest than in any other region of similar size. It's the place in the world where life is most fertile and active, and you can smell it just walking into the forest. It smells like a greenhouse. Well, the surprising experience I had accompanying these Ashaninka people into this bewildering diversity was that they had names for just about every species of plant, and they ascribed uses to half of them. They said, we know plants that can accelerate the healing of wounds or cure diarrhea or heal chronic backache. They used plants as foods, building materials, cosmetics, dyes, and remedies. Each time the occasion arose to try one of these plant remedies on myself, I would do so only to find that they worked. So I began asking my Ashaninka consultants how they knew what they knew about plants. Their answer was enigmatic. They said, knowledge about plants comes from the plants themselves, and our ayahuasqueros, tabaqueros, or shamans take ayahuasca or eat tobacco concentrate and speak in their visions with the essences or spirits or mothers that are common to all life forms and that are sources of information. They said nature speaks to people in visions and in dreams. Well, at the time I didn't take seriously what these Indians were telling me. It couldn't be true, because to consider that there's verifiable information in your hallucinations is the definition of psychosis. You have to be crazy to believe that. It was an epistemological impossibility. And besides, it contradicted the main aim of my research, which was to demonstrate that these people used their resources rationally. Nevertheless, after a few months in this community, I found myself in a neighboring community and drinking some manioc beer with some men one evening and asking them about the origin of their knowledge about plants. And one man said, Hermano Jeremias, brother Jeremy, if you want to know the answer to your question, you have to drink ayahuasca. And if you like, I can show you sometime. He called it the television of the forest. He said you could see images and learn things. Well, I accepted his proposition, and several nights later found myself on the platform of a quiet house with this ayahuasca and several other people. And he administered the bitter brew, and then started, after a moment of silence, humming and then singing these gentle melodies, these kind of slightly dissonant and looping melodies. And I began to see all kinds of images, and suddenly found myself surrounded by enormous fluorescent serpents about 15 yards long and 1 yard high, and they seemed to be 100 times more intensely real and giving off bright lights than ordinary reality. And these serpents began communicating to me through a kind of telepathic language that went right through my forehead. And they said, "You're just a little human being, a tiny human being." And I could see, looking at them, that what they were saying was true, that my ordinary, three-dimensional, rational, materialist perception of reality had limits, starting with my presupposition that what my eyes were showing me didn't exist. I could see that my worldview had bottomless arrogance, and this caused it to collapse in front of me, at which point I had to vomit. The word in Ashaninka for ayahuasca is kamaranki, from the verb kamarank, to vomit, and it also contains maranki, which means serpent. So in their language, the sacred shamanic brew is called serpent vomit. I stood up and stepped over these serpents, saying, "Excuse me," and leaning against a tree and vomiting colors. It's a long story. And eventually made my way back to the circle where the shaman was singing, and on the wings of his melody, I blasted out of my body. I've omitted to say that before we drank ayahuasca, he prepared a cigarette, Toei. I didn't even know what Toei was, but it's actually a kind of datura, and I would recommend staying away from datura. In fact, I don't recommend anybody do anything. Taking psychoactive plants is risky. Okay, that's the end of the public health. Anyway, materialist anthropologist has out-of-body experience. Holy moly, the planet was tiny, all white and covered in ice. And then the shaman shifted his melody and I landed back in my body. Wait, he can't. And then I saw hundreds of thousands of highly coherent and beautiful images that left rock videos in the dust like a kind of prehistorical technology. Images like the veins of the human hand flashing back and forth with the veins of the green leaf. Message was, it's the same stuff. They had hundreds of thousands of other images. It was impossible to remember it all. Well, as Arno said, the next day you actually feel better. I felt surprisingly good. I went down to the river to freshen up, and I took the leaf of a bush and held it up to the sunlight, and I could see that it was literally true. That the green leaf and the human skin, it was the same stuff. I'd never thought about this so literally. It was the first time in my 25 years of life that I felt part of nature. I was like a kind of plant that could walk.